Let's talk about high notes. There may be nothing more glorious than playing the climactic, exciting high notes in flute repertoire. But sometimes, if we haven't spent time cultivating a gorgeous, in tune, effortless high register, the high notes can be downright dangerous. Without lots of care in the practice room, high notes can unintentionally become sharp, shrill, and painful, or worse yet, weak and wimpy and kind of anemic sounding. All I can say to those challenges is thank goodness for harmonics. I am obsessed with harmonics. I can think of nothing in the world more helpful with learning how to play clear, singing, in tune, powerful, epic high notes than harmonics. For the rest of this video, we're going to explore the different ways in which harmonics are your magic teachers for the high register, and even what to do when you start playing high notes that are kind of past where the harmonics will keep being helpful. As with the rest of the Aspiring Flutists Epic Inspiration course, enjoy collecting the clues, experimenting, and staying open to new and exciting worlds of sound and feeling in the high register. Let's dive into the magic of harmonics and talk about the secret sweet spots for pitches just above the staff to about high G or G sharp. The music you see on the screen is only one line of my harmonic wave exercise, but you can access the free PDF of the entire exercise in the information below this video. When I play for you in a moment, this first version is going to be ineffective. Not only am I going to take a breath in between the harmonics and the regular fingerings, breaking up the line, but I'm also, when I get to those regular fingerings, I'm just gonna blow lots of air for the sake of blowing lots of air, as so many flutists do in the high register. You'll notice the problems with this version right away. Regular fingerings ended up sounding a lot sharper and shriller than my harmonics. Now for an effective version of this exercise, I'm going to study the sound and the feel of the harmonics and transfer all the good stuff over to the regular fingerings, even if it feels like I'm doing something brand new. Maybe especially if it feels like I'm doing something brand new. Much better. When you try this exercise, practice listening low as you play the harmonics. Listen to that lower masculine singer voice. It's kind of whispery and it's underneath the silvery, fluty top voice of the harmonics. If you listen low, it'll be easier to transfer all the good stuff over to the regular fingerings, and you'll have more access to beautifully in tune and clear high notes. Before we keep exploring the magic and power of harmonics, I want to share with you this really cool visualization that I got from Carolyn Nussbaum. Imagine that you and I are standing in front of a giant fruit tree, and every piece of fruit on this tree is juicy and ripe for the plucking. Also, every piece of fruit on this tree represents a note on the flute. Imagine that I reach out to a low hanging branch and grab my low C piece of fruit. And then I ask you to reach out and grab your high G, the one 4 ledger lines above the staff. In your imagination, are you reaching for a high branch? A lot of my students do when I first share this visualization with them. But much to your surprise, when I show you where my high G is, I reach out to a low hanging branch again. The truth is, there are no flute fruit notes high up in the tree. They're all on low hanging branches because the flute is below your mouth. Remember how I'm obsessed with harmonics? Something I practice constantly and encourage my students to do the same is something I call harmonic check-ins. Let's look at this wonderfully exciting passage from Chaminade's Concertino. It's so fun to play the high notes with passion, but since we want depth and resonance, not sharp and shrill, harmonic check-ins are really helpful. To find the fingerings for a harmonic check-in, simply use the lowest version of a fingering for a perfect fifth below the pitch you want to practice. I use my fingers. So for instance, the first pitch in this passage is a B natural, B, A, G, F sharp, E. We're going to use a low E fingering for the harmonic check-in for the B. As we practice all the high notes, we'll use E, F, F sharp, and G for the harmonic check-ins as we practice the pitch of B, C, C sharp, and D. I like to do the harmonic check-ins twice, the regular version once, and then rinse and repeat. If you pepper your practice with frequent harmonic check-ins, you can train your ears, lips, and mind to play beautifully in tune and effortless high notes. One of my favorite quotes for high-level flute playing is from the philosopher Thomas Carlyle. He said, "Genius is the infinite capacity for taking pains." When it comes to playing gorgeous high notes or pitches in any part of the flute range, I believe it is beyond worth it to take your time, take great care, and discover where the secret sweet spots are for you. Allow me to show you my double harmonic check-in exercise, which utilizes not only one harmonic study, but two. In this exercise, the double harmonic exercise, I'm going to show you how I work on my high E natural. Now, if we just go a perfect fifth below, that would be an A fingering, but I'm going to take it a step further and use a harmonic to study my most beautiful A. So I'm going to go a fifth below the A, G, F, E, D. I'm going to do a low D fingering for the A, then a regular A, then leave my fingers on the A because I'm going to use the A for the E, then finally the E. Let me say it again. D fingered A, A fingered E, E. Smooth path is the goal. As with all sound studies, take your time and be willing to do so many repetitions as you discover new things. I hope you make lots of wonderful discoveries utilizing harmonic check-ins and double harmonic check-ins, but I also like to offer you a helpful resource linked below this video. It's called the Secret Sweet Spot Finder Guide, and it's a great companion to the low, middle, and high register videos in this course. Okay, let's talk about the cracking edge. Even though this video is about the high register, we're going to take a step back and look at the low register for the example of the cracking edge. Now keep in mind, my low register is 2 octaves. So the low A that I start with and the A above the staff that I end up with, in my mind, they're both in the low register. First, I'm going to play a long, clear, low A, just as a square one starting point. Next, I'm going to act like I'm about to play an octave A, but I'm going to try to demonstrate it for you in slow motion, because what happens as I sort of zoom the air, increase the airspeed, and in my mind's ear think, I want this to be an octave higher, along the way in slow-mo, I'm gonna hit a wall. It's like this flickering wall that I call the cracking edge. It's that spot where the flute doesn't know which A you wanna go to. So I'm gonna try to demonstrate this for you. I hope you heard that flickering sound. You might not hear it over this microphone. But it sounds like kind of like it's jumping back and forth between the octaves. Now, what happens with a lot of flute players is that when they hit the cracking wall, there's a lightning fast reaction, and they just want to make sure the top note comes out, so they end up overblowing. And keep in mind that overblowing could just be micromillimeters. So they'll hit that cracking wall and then just blast the thing. So the A an octave higher is going to end up sounding sharper and have nowhere near as nice a color. Quick story, I had a chance to play for another flute hero of mine in a lesson, and I was very young, undergrad, and went in like, look at me go. I played the second movement of Lieberman's Sonata, and I thought we were going to work on all these high level things. And then we spent the whole lesson on 1 octave. And I will never ever forget that lesson, because it was so helpful seeing just the passion and attention to detail this player had for just a simple interval. At the time, I didn't realize the power of the octave. And just noticing the richness of tone that was utterly smooth as he went to the next octave. It blew my mind. So instead of just overblowing and just kind of making that higher octave come out, I'm going to go right through the cracking edge. I'm going to have the eye of the tiger, or sort of the ear of the tiger, and stick to my guns and never overblow. I'll do vibrato on both. And now no vibrato on both. You know, it's so interesting to spend some time just with the octave, because you'll notice little teeny tiny micro movements are already almost too much. So why the heck am I spending all this time telling you about the cracking edge when we are in a high register video? Well, in a moment, when I show you the energy to the drop spot exercise and encourage you to experiment with it, there's this yodely flip up spot, and it's very similar to the cracking edge idea. Now, I'm doing my absolute best to show this to you in a YouTube video, but the truth is you have to spend time experimenting experimenting with this to really understand what I'm talking about. So if you spend time working on your ascending slurred octave and or the energy to the drop spot exercise that I'm going to show you soon, I am so curious. I want to hear about your experiences with that flip up, yodely, secret, sweet spot that really makes high notes effortless. If this all sounds mysterious, even though we're not to the sfumato section yet, I'm just going to remind you, tension of opposites. You know, sfumato literally means going up in smoke, and it was originally associated with the artworks of Leonardo da Vinci, which is why I have the Mona Lisa there for the icon. And it's this like blurring of one color to the next. So I can't think of a better example than the octave or the flip up yodely sweet spot for the energy to the drop spot exercise, which I will show you in a moment. I am obsessed with harmonics and harmonic check-ins. Anytime a pitch that I'm practicing is not ringing or singing the way that I would like it to, I definitely do harmonic check-ins. However, harmonic check-ins are really effective up to a certain point. When you get to about high G or G sharp, you may start to notice diminishing returns because you have to blow harder to make the harmonic speak. Because effortless, gorgeous flute playing is the goal, we never want to overblow or force. This is why when I get to high G up to high B, I often use something I call the drop spot exercise. I want to develop my high register sounds in what I call the ringing zone in an effortless way. I'll demonstrate here on a high A. I'm going to finger the high A as usual, but with such a sleepy face, sleepy jaw, hot, slow air approach that it won't come out at the regular high pitch register. Kind of sounds like blowing across a Coke bottle. I do the Coke bottle version many times, checking in with what I call bobblehead swivel neck freedom to make sure that my neck muscles aren't grabbing. Remember, head balance facilitates a smooth air path. After the Coke bottle rounds, I allow a little bit more whoosh, just a tiny bit more lip engagement until I hear the second level of sound. Recommend that you do this exercise over a long period of time. Allow yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, as many minutes as you can spare, because you never want to rush or force. You want to discover the secret sweet spot. There's a few rounds of Coke bottle sound, a few rounds of that second level, and then it may take longer to find the final level where there's this magical little yodely flip up spot, and you can find where the high note really starts to speak effortlessly. When you find that magical yodely flip up spot, then you can feed it with a smooth, steady airstream and fill the room with sound. Flutists who just blow lots of air randomly are going to get sharp, shrill high notes, but flutists that listen mindfully for the secret sweet spots can then feed the air into the very spot that's going to sound the most beautiful for their high notes. Perfectionist trap alert. And I say the following with love as a constantly recovering perfectionist myself. We flutists can so often fall into the trap of thinking we have some kind of control. And under this spell, the illusion of control, we can definitely squeeze too tight, jam our flutes into our faces, then the flute goes too high. We might be pulling back, rolling in, all kinds of things that are all about contraction, when really gorgeous, beautiful, effortless, amazing flute playing is about expansion. So here's a mantra for you, and one element of the mantra might help on one day. Another day, all of the elements might help, but I promise you, in the high register, you're going to want to use this mantra often. Here is the mantra: down, out, forward, and loose. I'll say it again, memorize it: down, out, forward, and loose. The down is how low can you go? Get your flute off of your bottom lip, because if you're squishing your bottom lip, you don't have as much flexibility. Out is rolling out. We only want to cover 1/3 of the tone hole, not too much, especially in the high register. Forward is about the right arm going forward. Sometimes I call it my microphone arm. And then the loose, don't be scared now. Sometimes I have my students just toss their flute a little bit to remember how light it is. Down, out, forward, and loose. If you're ever having trouble with your high notes, try this mantra and you may be happily surprised at the results. Once a college student of mine was really struggling to play with bravery in the high register. No matter what she tried, the highest note in her passage was always kind of weak and awkward because she was scared. Only after I made her play the same passage, adding even higher notes, did she realize her previously scary high note wasn't so high after all. In fact, she was playing a section in Griffith's poem, letter L, con fuoco, really needing fiery, powerful, brave high notes. And the passage goes something like, but when she would play it, it was like, the high G would just get shut down. And so I really dedicated some time with her, and we took up a big portion of her lesson that day, pushing to the challenges of playing even higher, and it really paid off. I made her go, and you can bet the high C sharp was a big challenge. It was like a practice project all on its own. But after she had some aha moments with the big high C sharps, I was like, hey, let's go back to the originally written version. And it really was no big deal for her. So keep in mind, high notes are all relative. If the highest note in a passage is intimidating you for any reason, either transpose the melody higher or add more high notes. Use any kind of creative strategy you can so that the actual big high note becomes your friend and doesn't seem intimidating at all. If you've watched the low register video in this course already, you already know that when I was a younger flutist, I thought that the sleepy air was for low register and the fast air with lots of lips was for high register. Then I had a professor that flipped me upside down. Now for the high register, you would be amazed at how slow my air actually is. If you engage in harmonic check-ins, harmonic exercises, energy to the drop spot exercises, and keep exploring all these secret sweet spots for high notes, you're going to start to notice that not only does blasting and overblowing completely take you out of the realm of the sweet spots, it's really not the way that high notes work. You'll get kind of an imitation of a high note, and probably a sharp and shrill one at that, if you you insist on doing that kind of cold, fast, lip-oriented air. And you're probably having all kinds of tension problems as well. So go back to the idea of hot air. Keep it in mind as you're doing your experiments with harmonics, and collect your clues every single time you're practicing anything in the high register. You know, the flute really does run on opposites. The higher I go, the lower I listen and the lower I connect to my center of gravity and support. Also, it's so interesting to me. It's kind of an amazing phenomenon that I can get so much power in the high register while using a hot air, slower air kind of approach. You know, I have this student. She's very talented, very high level, but we had a lesson one time and she was pretty skeptical about my comments about using much less air than she was, even though I was getting more power in the sound. She actually came up and put her hand really close to my face, and then she believed me because she realized I wasn't blowing anywhere near the amount of air that she was. And she was, working so hard to get just a little bit of sound, and I was working so much less to get so much more sound. So remember to embrace the tension of opposites anytime you're practicing your high notes. Sometimes flute players don't reach their potential in the high register because without even realizing it, they're practicing in a self-protective way, protecting their ears from the loud sound of the high notes. Here's a bonus tip for you. Practice for a few weeks with earplugs in or headphones on. I especially like noise canceling headphones or headphones that cover your ears completely. Not only will you notice a lot of new things while you're doing this kind of practice, but when you take the earplugs out or the headphones off, you may be blown away by the more effortless resonance you've been creating when you weren't so worried about the loudness of the sounds. Sometimes the perfect solution for busy brain is just to play some beautiful music. If you'd like a lovely exercise to relax into your high register using harmonic check-ins, check out the Whole New World High Register exercise linked in the description box below. That last video was a fun exercise I did in a lesson with a student. I wanted her to feel what I feel when I play effortless high notes. It feels like trust falling off a mountain. Instead of pushing and forcing, it's about expanding, trusting, and yes, falling. The thicker the myelin, the faster the connection. Including harmonics in your daily practice sessions makes all the difference. My 3 favorite harmonic exercises are linked below this video, and I hope you'll share your experiences practicing them in the comments below. First is the harmonic wave exercise I showed you earlier. Second is the second exercise in Helen Blackburn's Super Duper Zen Yoga Warm-Up packet. This is an amazing packet. And exercise number 2, the magic carpet, helps me find what I call my concert hall sound. I've linked Helen's website below, and I really hope you'll visit it and download the warm-up packet. Seriously, it's an amazing warm-up packet. The third exercise is my epic warm-up, with which I begin every flute playing day. The harmonics contained in the epic warm-up ensure that I feel comfortable and connected to my high register in an effortless, beautiful way for the day. Speaking of the tension of opposites, let me give you one more tip for this high register video. Always remembering that you have to go collect your own clues in the practice room. But this is definitely a love versus fear tip. So also it's kind of gross, sorry. I was trying to figure out, I was about to play a concerto with orchestra. I was trying to figure out, how am I going to sound super, super powerful, but also be relaxed, because I kept accumulating throat tension anytime I thought about trying to get massive volume. And back to the tension of opposites, always, you do sometimes, especially for fortissimo dynamics, you have to support so much, but also you have to be relaxed and not blast the air. So I was thinking and trying to come up with my own way of figuring out, how the heck am I going to do this? So I kept thinking, what regular life situation do I have tons of support, but also am totally open and relaxed? And then I realized, and I'm so sorry, this is kind of gross, I realized when you throw up, you're very open, but you're also supporting like crazy. And this was a huge epiphany for me, and it definitely worked for that concerto, just to have that openness supported from the inside out, but not to accumulate tension. And I've since upgraded it to a much more elegant visual, so you can stick with this one. But I definitely feel like my power comes now from, in the high register, especially loud dynamics, it comes from fire breathing like a dragon, support from the inside out. I love sharing what I've learned about flute with you. If you want to find my books or online courses, visit Carolyn Nussbaum Music Company at www.fluteforyou.com. If you want to find some free resources, visit my website at practicejunkie.com. And if you'd like to study with me at the University of Missouri Kansas City Conservatory, email me at t.sanchez@umkc.edu. It's always a good idea to be radically flexible with fingerings. Now, we don't want to just use random alternate fingerings or substitute in harmonics just out of convenience, not paying attention to the sound they're creating. But I am a big fan of using fingerings that make everything easier, more fluid, more in tune. Anything that makes your music more user-friendly, to me, is worth it. So first up, high B. I always think of the Nielsen concerto. There's a big high epic B that sounds so much better when you use double trill key and ring finger in the right hand. So it's like the original, but it's double trill keys, ring finger. It brings the pitch way down. You can sing your heart out. I also have a trill that I just love in the high register. It's the Mozart trill. I call it that because it's perfect for the end of the exposition in the Mozart G major flute concerto. Instead of doing a harmonic-y sounding E to high F sharp with the thumb, instead I start with the E, but then at the same time move my right hand to the second trill key and wiggle my left hand middle finger. Usually people are starting from the appoggiatura, the upper note of the trill. So do real F sharp, real E, I leave my pinky off, same time, right hand to second trill key, left hand middle. It sounds much more operatic. It has that bird-like silvery sound. I prefer it to the harmonic-y thumb trill. I do fork my Fs for certain contexts. It's a nice fingering to have in your back pocket to put that ring finger down on the high F. It'll bring the pitch down right away. You do want to take care because it dulls the color. So a better move, instead of using that as your original home base fingering, just save it for handy occasions, maybe if you're in a flute section or it's a big, loud, high F moment. But for your regular high F moments, work on that double harmonic exercise we talked about earlier in the video. In this case, it would be a low E flat fingered B flat, then a B flat, then a B flat fingered F, then an F. And you might have noticed in my example, I was a little bit sharper when I got to the F. That's one of those I would walk around the room and condition myself to match the harmonics even better every time. Okay, I do use middle finger high F sharp a lot. It's more in tune. I feel like I can sparkle it more. And a lot of times if it's soft and maybe at the end of a phrase, I might put the C sharp key down. But I think it's a really nice fingering as a go-to. I'll use traditionally fingered high F sharp for technical passages that I don't want to feel too much like it's got cross fingerings in it. For those of you that accidentally programmed in middle finger for the F sharp right at the top of the staff, don't do that anymore. It sounds out of tune. It's not a nice color. You might have picked up that fingering from somebody who was a saxophone player, or maybe was not a professional flutist and was teaching beginning band and maybe accidentally gave you that fingering. But this one sounds much nicer for the one at the top of the staff. Last but not least, for high E, my go-to is pinky off and extra air. The pinky off keeps it from cracking, the extra air keeps it from dropping. Still do the double harmonic exercise to make sure you're connecting with the sweet spot, in tune, clear, gorgeous, always keep studying. But 9 times out of 10, pinky off and extra air. I do put the pinky back down for those special situations where you want a more sparkly color, maybe something marked mezzo piano or softer, something that's more intimate. Anyway, there's lots more fingerings to explore. I love going to Woodwind Fingering Guide. Just Google that, you'll go right to it. But yeah, be radically flexible with your fingerings and don't feel like there's virtue in being a purist. You do want to be able to play any fingering combination. You don't want to feel limited in any way. But in terms of preparing your repertoire and sounding your absolute best, alternate fingerings or substituting harmonics sometimes can be just the ticket. Use your best judgment and make sure that sound is your overall priority, with a very close second being comfort.